interview dead. Today, we're taking a look at the state affairs, aka Kamala Harris's media blitz, a scandal that happened over at CBS, a friend of mine who's gone viral because Anne Hathaway just personally apologized to her over an interview, over a decade ago, and how she conducted herself, and my own stories of celebrity interviews that I've kept buried. Talk about dead until now. It's Talk to Me, Taylor.
Deemed the celebrity whisperer by Playboy.
This is the best interview of the day.
Thanks for having me.
You hit the nail on the head.
100%.
Period, yeah.
Touch them, Chris. You're cracking me up.
Wear them, baby.
She's good.
Taylor Ferber.
Let's take a little trip down memory lane, kids, shall we? Way back when, before the days of TikTok, a more innocent time. Young Taylor here was a big fucking nerd because while all the kids were out doing cool kid things, okay, I would be up at night under the covers. No, this isn't going where you think it is, okay? You little pervs, you little freaks. I'd be up late at night under the covers, probably like in high school, obsessed with celebrity interviews. I'd be up late at night watching, Johnny Carson's and Ryan Seacrest and all this, right? LOL now, right? At the depth of Ryan Seacrest interviews. But I digress. I was always fascinated by the art form, right? Really, I don't know. I don't even know why, truthfully. I think something about getting a different side and a deeper, more complex and interesting side of people who we idolize, who are so high profile and powerful, we put on a pedestal in a way that we don't normally see them. And I think kind of getting into the human psyche in that way, right? Just call me a little Freud. Like that's what they call me. Taylor F. Taylor Freud. What can I say? And this is way before I was deemed, as you just heard in this intro, the celebrity whisperer, right? Because as a young reporter in Hollywood, I immediately was up to the take of how fake, phony, baloney all of it was. I was like, this is bullshit. Nobody cares about this nonsense that they're asking, that they're talking about, which is why I ultimately created my own platform that was really sort of out of the norm, right? Getting up in kind of in these celebs' faces with the selfie stick and getting them to go somewhere more human and honest and interesting. But even with that, guys, all good things must come to an end. Why? Because, the man just likes to shatter our hopes and dreams. No, but even I quickly, and I've talked about it at length on this show, in op-eds, all of the publicists, the studio heads, the studio execs, the, event runners who would be popping up out of your weave, out of your bra, out of your selfie stick, under the gutter, wherever it was, to control every interview, every interaction, whether it be you, whether it be the celebrity, the talent, whatever it is, right? And now we've seen all of this just really go to a whole new shameless level. So, little me under the covers at night. I hate to break it to you. They always ask, like, if you could go back and tell your younger self something, you know what? You fucking thought, bitch. Okay? You thought. But you know what? I appreciate the rose-colored glasses and give it all mentality that you had at the time. But yes, we are in a much, like Dorothy, we are not in Kansas. We are not in a tornado in Florida. Like, we are in none of these places. We are in a land far, far away.
I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
I do think while we explore this topic today, right, the interview, whether it be a celebrity, an Elon Musk, a politician, a powerful, high-profile person, think about it. It is an important art form because at the end of the day, it's getting to truth, right? And how people operate, namely people who are really powerful in society, who we take our cues from. And yet it's become like, it may as well be at the bottom of Sasquatch's ass and or foot because like it has just been squashed and become a whole other thing. So yeah, it's kind of sad. It's kind of sad. Let's talk about what illustrates this better, but Kamala Harris's media blitz. This is why I say the state of affairs, because this is literally the biggest joke since 1999 when movies were actually funny, okay? She has been hitting up all these shows. First, Call Her Daddy, which I did a segment on earlier this week, in which literally they may as well be making candy canes with one another. And Alex Cooper is like quoting Kamala Harris to Kamala Harris. Like, not in a way of like, you once said this, but in a way of where she may as well be a really like real life living, breathing Obama hope poster, like quoting an aspirational Kamala quote to Kamala. What? Then she's doing like a god awful, like women's Beverly Hills happy hour gone wrong, scissoring with the ladies at The View, to literally having a beer with Stephen Colbert. It's all just nonsense and it's all just a joke. And just saying these same things over and over on all of them. All of them are just completely in her asshole, like asking questions that are literally so ridiculous. I'm like, what do you expect her to say? Like, do you want to go and hang out with her and push her on the swing set back and forth after school with her? Like, it's not going to happen. Like, stop trying to make fetch happen in your lame ass interview. So it's just the state of it, unless there was one exception, right? And because of all of this, because the powers that be, whether it be the subject, whether it be the organization, whoever it is, because they're so controlling. I said this when I talked about Call Her Daddy and Kamala Harris going on there. I said, do you think for 5 seconds her team is going to put her in front of someone who will actually challenge her? Because they're not going to make her, she's prone to kinds of, making herself like look kind of not very bright and dense, right? I don't want to say stupid. I ain't going to throw around hate words. But, anything is hate speech these days. Just ask Elon Musk. We're getting to him and Tucker later, right?
You stupid.
They're not.
What's 9 plus 10?
21.
You stupid.
Maybe I stand corrected, because the one case where this was a little bit of a different speed was her 60 Minutes interview with Bill Whitaker, in which he challenges her on a number of notions. And this lady just flat out ignores it. Like, she is giving an acceptance speech. The music is rolling. The credits are gone. The Chinese theater's empty. And she is not taking the cue. She is still rolling. So, for example, he asked her first about her plan for the economy, in which this lady is pulling money out of every nook and cranny that you never, apparently from the Illuminati and from Taylor Swift's wallet and trust fund, because I don't know where she's getting this money, right? She promises to give tax cuts and breaks to, first-time homeowners and small businesses and first year for children and childcare and all this shit. And Bill Whitaker is like, A, where are you planning on getting this money? He literally says, he's like, you're in the real world. And B, that would put the country in more of a financial hole, right? And it would add $3 trillion to the national deficit. She basically is just like kick rocks and just doesn't. She's like, well, economists have said that this is a great plan. It's a superb plan. It is the plan. So again, doesn't even answer it. Another is when he asks how she's changed her positions on things. Same thing. She goes on this merry-go-round ride about how she's been to all the places in the country and to Timbuktu and back, and I still don't have an answer, basically, of why she's changed her positions from Black to white, from A to Z so drastically on such huge issues, right? And I guess the most probably entertaining and sad is when he challenges her on the border, right? Because let's face it, since Joe Biden and Kamala have been in office, this border has been the biggest mess that it has been the biggest. It is a tsunami. It is a hurricane. You talk about natural disasters, okay? This may as well be the San Andreas, but opposite, because instead of falling into the fall, everyone is bringing their ass here. The border has been a crisis. I'm not going to get into the weeds and the people eating the cats and dogs, okay? But just know it's been a long-standing issue, like she says. But since they've come in office, the numbers in the millions of people coming here illegally have literally quadrupled, okay? Like, the numbers don't lie, bitch. And so he kind of asked her like 3 fucking times. He's like, was that a mistake? Were your policies a mistake? She just completely swerves it like it's a game of frisbee. I mean, really, it's like, well, since in the last year, we have tightened down and we've got it cut in half. And he's like, no, I understand. But like, I'm not trying to go on a time warp with you. Initially, lady, you can argue that you guys have quadrupled the amount of illegal aliens coming in over our border. Never cares to explain it. And it's so funny too, because she gets all excited at first because he's setting it up like this has been an issue, right? So she thinks he's going to like what everyone else has done in all of these interviews is throw Trump under the bus and blame him for everything, for like the weather, for the nighttime, for the whatever it is, like for the tornado happening right now. I bet like Trump is to blame for everything. And she gets all excited. And then once she sees that he's challenging her again, she just completely doesn't answer. So I say all this because what is the point of the interview? And I saw this time and time and time again in Hollywood, right? Which I'm going to detail for you all today. You are in for a treat. Like you are in for the dessert that is the Miss Trunchbull chocolate cake in Matilda, because they ultimately, if it's not the powers that be, it's the subject who, as we're seeing, are more and more prone to just ignoring shit, to be this on their self-serving mission of just solely what they want to say, right? Without addressing anything outside of that. And, you know, it's just, it is not the vibe. It's not the vibe. So yeah, I don't know who is media training this lady. She needs to, like, you know what they need to do? People who go rogue, Elon Musk, Angelina Jolie. You think Angelina Jolie is caught dead? This bitch is on her shit. I've talked about her before, but she doesn't need a script. She doesn't need to stay on her point. She is so on her game and on her toes. Like she can take it. So all of this is complete hogwash. And thank you to the state of affairs for making my Penn State journalism degree a big fat wash. Like, may as well set it on fire. Yeah, thanks to you all for that. So that's when the subject themselves just cock blocks the public from the truth, or for the interview, for the challenge, right? Then you have, which I've also experienced, when the organization itself will do that. So this is the CBS scandal controversy in a nutshell. So on October 7th, right, the 1-year anniversary of Hamas's attack on Israel, in which they butchered and slaughtered, 1,200 people. You know the numbers, the vicious rapes and hostages held, and that tragedy. Actually the biggest, the most amount of Jews killed in a single day since the Holocaust. So you have Tony DeCopel, who's interviewing writer Tanashi Coates. And this man, basically, he's writing a book, and it's very much one-sided, by his own admission. That is, in his words, sort of fighting for the voice that we don't hear, aka the Palestinians, right? And so nowhere in his book does he even mention Iran and its proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah, and the fact that Israel, since its conception, has been attacked by its outsiders and adversaries day after day, trying to wipe it off the map. Essentially, that it should not even be a state, be it, suicide bombings, and it just goes on and on. And so Tony DeCopel challenges him, and it's very cordial, and it's fine. And he says to him, where though is, like, do you acknowledge, and where is the mention of the fact that everybody, Israel's been attacked pretty much on the daily in vicious ways since day one. It's outside countries and, again, opponents, to put it politely, politically correct, don't even think that it should exist and want to wipe it off the map, essentially. And, Tanashi Coates sort of holds firm to his belief. And again, says, this is like a whole other path that I'm not even going to go down, but basically says, like, in the mainstream, we see plenty of like pro-Israel stuff, and I'm giving a voice to the voiceless and fighting for them, aka the Palestinians, right? Which again, this story actually, case in point of why I think that's not true, and why there's such an anti-Semitic underpinning and undertones in the mainstream media. You see headlines, you see facts being omitted. You see things not being changed or fact checked, Israel being blamed. Like, it just goes on and on, right? So with all that said, I beg to differ. But yeah, he doesn't back down. He talks about, why he has this voice. Tony politely challenges him, as a journalist should do, right? Because if you're a journalist and you're seeing someone peddling one side of a story, you could argue that's misinformation. Like, where's all the other shit, right? And that's exactly what he was doing. It's like, okay, but there's such a complex issue, but there's a whole other side of the story that's being omitted. So the crazy part about this is, and right, that's what a journalist should do. And it's so sad. And I used to get so frustrated about this in Hollywood. Like, since when did it turn into this kowtowing of, I don't want to upset the person, or I have to stick in this narrative, or the narrative of what the mainstream is, or what the publication or the editors or the organization wants. A good journalist isn't afraid to kind of get in there and get down to it. Like, i.e. Diane Sawyer, Barbara Walters, need I say more? Like, fucking gangsters, right? Like, asking the uncomfortable questions and also allowing the audience, like, that's journalistic integrity, right? To see all sides of a truth, and again, to push in a challenge. So the crazy thing about this, because Tony's a couple who, by the way, has Jewish kids and they're in Israel, challenged him, his colleagues at CBS were really it caused a whole uproar. And on October 7th, right? Like, if this isn't so insensitive, I don't know what is. The head of CBS News and the head of the news department had an internal meeting with the staff about, basically, they kept it ambiguous, but it was obviously, this is the thing that kind of tipped it off, right? And percolated toward this. Had an internal meeting about, their editorial standards and how journalists need to check their biases and opinions at the door, and how, they really want to have a courageous and robust newsroom of reporting. And like, they literally were like, we're sorry we didn't get to this sooner, right? So I don't need to go more into the story, but you get the idea. How insane. And you want to talk about that there's not a bias underneath, like, and you had the chief legal correspondent speak up. And by the way, all the audio, I listened to it, is available on the Free Press. That's why this story has blown up, right? But how insane for reprimanding and talking about editorial standards when all he did was merely challenge on something that should be challenging. And you had the chief legal correspondent literally on the call was like, I don't even understand what this is. Like, why are we even having this discussion right now? Like, what did he do? Be an actual journalist? And they basically like blew by her. Like, they straight up John Deered her and just bulldozed right by her on the call. And they were like, we'll take this offline, right? And didn't address it. So that is, a perfect example of, that's a perfect example of how not only colleagues, but the sheep and I've come, my Chrissy Teigen story, when I wrote that story about Chrissy Teigen for VH1, like, same thing. If you don't know, I will fill you in one day. Don't worry. But I became the scapegoat, and not only were the higher ups throwing me under the bus, but my own colleagues and friends, were like, fall in line. No, you can't like speak up about her. Chrissy Teigen owns all that. It's like, who fucking said? Who made you the head of everything, right? So in my opinion, it's like, how, and that's not even my opinion. It's just like, what is a journalist even for? What is a journalist even for? To, like, maybe we should have an internal meeting with the Washington Post, with the New York Times, with all these clowns, because what is it even for? Just to, like, you may as well be a Hollywood movie junket and just be an extension of PR marketing and be their cheerleader. It's like, what, to get your message out? So I think with the CBS thing is really completely sad, because that's irresponsible to not question somebody who's just running with something, or maybe factually incorrect, or maybe telling maybe an extreme or one-sided point of view of a story. So, like, you think if I sit down with Alex Jones, I'm just going to be like, yeah, groovy, right on, dude. It's like, on what planet?
I'm angry. I've had enough of these people. They're a bunch of Christian murderers, scum. They're on giant death factories, keeping babies alive and selling their body parts.
Why even call yourself a journalist, right? Like, it is a slap in the face to 16-year-old me. Let's just say that. And to the public who have working brains. So on the bright side, though, is kind of where we're headed. Or where I think like it's do or die, right? This is a dying breed. It may become obsolete, you know. It may be the arm of that guy in the cliff that James Franco played, where he got stuck and he cut his own arm off. Like that is about to be the interview. Or it can go this way. So I did sit and listen to, well, in fairness, it was on 2 times speed because, like, babe, I have a life to lead. But the Elon Musk interview on Tucker Carlson. I think that this is where it's going because A, neither of them like give a single fuck, right? And they're willing to go into, and granted, like it's kind of easy to say that because there are things they disagree on, but for the most part, they're kind of in the same camp of thinking, right? So it's like, right, easier said than done to just like shoot the shit hardy hard with somebody. But you know, I think that idea again, and they're talking about all kinds of things and they're talking about the Epstein list, they're talking about space, they're talking about like all kinds of stuff. And really just going there and not caring, right? And this is so indicative too of the press because it's a whole controversy, the joke that Elon Musk made about Kamala Harris. He tweeted that just because this is why, because it was on the Tucker interview. He tweeted that like, notice how nobody is like trying to even assassinate Kamala Harris, right? He doubles down on it on Tucker Carlson, which is why the news has collectively lost its mind. It's in a spiral. It's in a psych ward. It's had a complete and utter mental breakdown, right? And his whole thing, and they're like laughing about it, he and Tucker, and they're like, why would anybody want to assassinate? Like Trump's had all these assassination attempts. Like, notice how no one's even trying on Kamala Harris. His point wasn't that, of course, it's never okay. His point wasn't, dang it, like somebody should go make an assassination attempt on Kamala Harris. The point was that nobody cares to because she's irrelevant and is a puppet scarecrow, like straight out of The Wizard of Oz. So why would anybody try to? Like she's a puppet of the Democrats, right? Versus like somebody who actually people would try to assassinate who has immense power like a Trump. That's all he was saying. And honestly, when I listened to it, I was like, right, like I laughed and whatever. The mainstream is losing its mind. They're like, it's so insensitive, his disgusting joke, da da da, as if, again, he's actually calling for that. The other end of it is the sheer hypocrisy of how many pundits, news sites, you know, people of note, what have you, were like, with the first assassination attempt on Trump and Butler, we're like, oh man, like I wish they would have missed next time. It's like, but that's okay. So again, the hypocrisy is just out of control. And the double standards run deep. You know where they run so deep? Not only on Capitol Hill, not only in the newsrooms of all these joke organizations, but into Tinseltown, my friends. Like the hypocrisies and the double standards go all the live long day. Like they are just multiplying. It is like, you know, cockroaches, just insidious, like the human centipede, but like it's kind of like that gnarly. Okay. So with that said, not the most graceful transition, you may have seen the story that's gone viral about Anne Hathaway. So Kirsty Flaw is a friend of mine. She's a reporter, and it's just so crazy. She and I reconnected today and had a really great long conversation, and stay tuned because she and I may be like cooking up some things like Emerald Lagasse thought. And she went viral first a month ago because of her Blake Lively interview that resurfaced, in which Blake Lively was super rude to her with the baby bump, and it was everywhere. You probably have seen it. Cut to now, she's gone viral again, and she's created this really genius, in my opinion, commentary series on the heels of the Blake Lively thing. They're like 10-minute interviews in which she tells these stories of the inner workings of Hollywood and the machine and the studios and the talent and the publicists and all of it, right? And what they were really like. Most recently was a resurfaced video of her with Anne Hathaway when they were promoting Les Mis, which All of This Makes Me, back in 2012, and Anne Hathaway was rude to her. It went so viral, Anne Hathaway caught winds of it and personally apologized to Kirsty. Wrote this lengthy letter. Kirsty got it through her publicist, right? And it is this whole spectacle. And what I so appreciate about Kirsty and her work, I literally said to her today, I'm like, you are literally like, we are Siamese twins, like a psych and sharing a brain, because she talks so much about, publicists and studios controlling things, telling her to bury stories, telling her to not run things. When anything goes awry, the reporter is thrown under the bus and is immediately to blame. Questions being pre-orchestrated. You guys know that drives me nuts. Like, do not cross a bitch, aka me. And on top of it, how you'll never be invited again. Like, we all have to be little minions and be in line, right? Because if you step out of line, your outlet, you'll never be invited again. And this has frustrated me since, because of my early passions, like I started with on this like Scrooge Christmas story, Land Before Time moment. It's drove me so crazy, because I used to say, even in the peak of my time on Hollywood on the red carpet, like, I am not an extension of a studio or a movie marketing PR or marketing team. Like, hire somebody to do that, bitch. If you want me to just ask somebody, like, they don't want journalists to be journalists. Anytime you go somewhere, again, different or interesting. But meanwhile, they reprimand you, slap you on the wrist, you're punished. But the same old shit of, what did you like about this script? How is it like working with that? No one fucking cared. Like, literally ripped my own ears off. So I know this because, I was reflecting on all this and reconnecting with Kirsty today and prepping for this episode. And, my lifelong dreams of, real truth telling, free thinking interviews, just being in the sewer like the clown in it. But I have actually 2 stories for you today that I buried. I've never talked about them. I've never shared them, really nothing. That really plays into all this, right? Because even, I have so many stories, you guys, and so many of them, by my own admission, I've suppressed. And, I was sort of, even though as much as I tried to push up against it, hence my selfie interview site, my op-eds, all of it, to a degree, I was a little bit part of this machine, because again, it's like, I would get punished. I wouldn't get invited to things. My editors wouldn't get, my outlet, they'd be pissed. Like, it's just a whole trickle effect, right? Of the people who have a chokehold at their will of the whole system. And, it's a new chapter. That, just call me a scholastic book fair, because that chapter is closed, right? But I understand, because it's real and it really dominated everything. But one example is when I interviewed Taryn Manning. So Taryn Manning is, you may recognize her. She's a big actress, a little bit like kooky and offbeat. She was big in Orange is the New Black. She was in 8 Mile with Eminem. And I interviewed her. I think she was promoting Orange is the New Black. And it was a pre-Emmys event. They often do these things where, they're trying to promote to get voters and people in the Academy to vote for the show, whatever. And this is when I was doing my selfie stick interviews. And I could probably dig it up somewhere if I look hard. If I put my Inspector Gadget gear on hard and fast enough, I'm sure I could find it on a drive somewhere with cobwebs on it. But she says to me on camera, all of this in Hollywood is basically fake. Like, this is all a joke. None of this is real. Like, all of this is so fucking fake. I'm paraphrasing, but this is the idea. And I just was so stunned, because I was like, wow, like, nobody is that real. Nobody says that. And she's like, doubles down. She's like, no, seriously, like, I don't even remember what I asked her that prompted the question, but she was like, no, all of this shit is fake. And how telling, right, of this entire thing, of the machine, of people trying to, like, how fake all of it is. I don't care if it's media, if it's politics, if it's Hollywood, like, how all of it is so orchestrated. And I remember at the time, I was like, I could easily get this over to like a TMZ and, get this. It wasn't more so what she said, but the message, right? And that's been my thing. I told even Kirsty today, like, that's my bigger message with the whole thing. Forget how the celebrities act. Like, it's never okay for them to be dicks. I'm sorry, you're getting paid millions and millions to put your hat on for 5 hours and promote a movie you're part of. Like, bitch, you signed up for it. Knock it off. Like, buy us a round of Veuve Clicquot and get the fuck over it, right? Like, wipe your tears. Like, I don't feel bad for you. It's more so like the control and the powers above that. And like I said, the whole sort of inner workings of the machine at large, trying to hold the power and take the power away, not only from the talent, but the journalists, and getting the truth out there, right? But I buried the story. And it's because I didn't want to, I just made a call at the time. I was like, I don't want to throw her under the bus or make her look bad. It's not worth it. And And, you know, I have no regrets about that. But, you know, and it's funny because Kirsty in her latest series did a similar video in which Zach Galifianakis at a junket, by the way, which is shocking he says this because junkets are by nature the most controlled, uptight. Like every entourage, publicist, manager, exec is literally like in your anus the entire time. And he says a similar version of that where it's like this whole thing is just like a fake machine, the Truman Show, like get me out, right? So it's super refreshing. And I think with all of this is why it's so important because people just want to get to what is real. Like we are, first of all, celebrities are coming up and becoming obsolete. That's a whole other thing. But we're tired of being played, right? And I was saying this like 8-9 years ago. So that's a Taryn Manning story, which I took that upon myself and I buried it. Again, to not, you know, paint her in a bad light or throw her under the bus. But my other one is with Katy Perry talking about Taylor Swift. So in, you know, anything with T Swift, like her team's Ursula tentacles are everywhere. So you can only imagine. But those of you may know that though these two have had in the past infamously been in big feuds, right? Like Taylor Swift's Bad Blood is about Katy Perry, all this. So this was in 2018. I used to cover American Idol regularly when it was Katy Perry, Lionel Richie, and Luke Bryan. So I'd go on the studio lot and interview all the contestants and all 3 judges after every single show, every week. And I asked, it was right at the height, I believe, or right when they were feuding or whatever it was. And I asked all 3 of them if, you know, Carrie Underwood was on that night. You know, every now and then they'll have like a guest judge or guest mentor, and Carrie Underwood was on that night. And I tossed it out to them, like, what do you guys think about Taylor Swift coming on? And they all enthusiastically were like, yeah, you know, like, let's do it. You know, even Katy Perry. I swear to God, you guys, I'm not going to blow by blow Mr. Rogers read you, but I actually have the email chain detailing this entire thing from 2018 with me and my editor. So the receipts are like fossils. They don't die. They exist. And Katie starts to, they're all kind of like, yeah. You know, the publicist literally grabs my arm and Katy Perry starts to say, like, you know, well, when I think about it, and they literally say to her, they're like, no, like, we're not doing this, and cut her off and don't let her finish. Then after the interview, the American Idol people, and I don't know who it was. I don't think it was her personal rep. I think it was the American Idol people come up to me personally. And you know, even though, like I said, I was a little bit in the machine, I always, of course, pushed up against it and challenged them. Not as much as I should have in hindsight, but I definitely was a little ball buster. And they came up to me and they were like, basically, you can't run that. And I was working for Us Weekly at the time. And they said that I couldn't run it because it was, quote, too personal and it wasn't about the show. And I challenged it. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, of course it's about the show. When all the judges were like, yeah, sounds great. Let's do it. Like, I think she's in town, whatever it is, right? And my editors at Us Weekly were pissed. Like, they're like, what? But right, it's that thing of if we ran it, we'd never be invited again. We'd be thrown under the bus. It's a whole thing. And the bigger picture with all this that I want to leave you with is what incentive, like that just goes to show, forget the subject themselves and like celebrities, politicians, whoever it is, being robots and being too brain dead to actually have the autonomy and be like, no, I'll take this. I'll answer this. No, I got this. Because they so often will bend a knee to their publicists at any given time, which I think is so lame. So forget that. But on a higher level, like, could you imagine what incentive would American Idol have, or the studio, whoever it is, have? I still don't know to this day. To shut down a story about Katy Perry extending an olive branch, like, that's how much they need to have their hands in and feel the impulse to literally control everything. Like, what incentive would it be? Because, like, it would come around, or Taylor Swift would get wind of it. Like, what incentive would they have to be like, oh, no, like, we can't possibly run this, right, and control it? Like I said, I still don't know. So with that being said, we're in a new dawn. The dawn is here. The dawn of the not brain dead interviews. And it's a time to, when it really comes to this, because I haven't lost hope in the interview, but I think we need to get to this, you know, free thinking and risk taking to honestly get there. Why? Because it is a vehicle of truth. And the truth is really what we all want, isn't it?